I'm going to give it a second. All right. Hopefully everybody is out there and can see us and hear us. I am Andrew Good here with PK Mace and our very first ever special guest, Brian Vieaux. So what we're going to do here to start things out is we're actually going to do the bio for Brian, which is brought to you by ChatGPT. We actually fed in Brian into ChatGPT and asked it to go ahead and write it. So we're kicking things off with a guest so impressive that his LinkedIn profile actually made me update my own. He's the president and COO of FinLocker, which, contrary to popular belief, is not a new secure dating app for accountants. Rather, a groundbreaking platform helping people get financially fit without ever having to set foot in a bank. Genius, really. You might know him as a fintech innovator, a mortgage wizard, or simply as that guy who wrote a book with a title so long, LinkedIn nearly charged extra for his bio space. Seriously, his book, Rethink Everything You Know About Being a Next-Gen Loan Officer, is the industry equivalent of telling people they've been holding pizza wrong their whole entire lives. When he's not revolutionizing mortgages, Brian hosts the podcast FinTech Fridays. It's like your favorite Netflix binge, but instead of cliffhangers and murder mysteries, it's packed with hot takes on credit scores and budgeting. So pretty much exactly the same excitement level. Please welcome the only man who can make mortgage origination sound cooler than it actually is, Brian Vieaux.
That's so
all
good.
Right, Brian. So the question is, how did ChatGPT do?
It was, it was in the atmosphere, right? It was there. It had it circled. It was good. It's funny. Somebody posted a prompt to ask GPT XYZ about you or whatever, and basically it was a GPT roasting me. So it's like ask ChatGPT to roast, me. And so I think you might have got that prompt link from my roast. So, it's not bad.
Well, there you go. All right. Glad it's not too bad. So, Brian, thanks so much for joining us again for the first episode. We really, really appreciate it. I think really to kick things off, what I am really interested in knowing, and I'm sure PK and Mace will have some questions, is really, one, how did you get into mortgage to begin with? And the follow-up question on that is, how did you make that leap over to technology?
Great question. First of all, congrats, guys. I'm super excited for this weekly show and honored to get the test run with you. And I'm just so you know, I'm looking at my other screen and your streaming is working, so that's a good sign.
We're not just sitting here in an echo chamber. All right.
I've done that. I've done a few of these, and I've had that not stream, which is no fun. So how did I get in mortgage? Well, everybody plans their way into this business, right? It's all orchestrated. So in 1991, after 6 months after graduating college and like 4 months after getting married, I needed a job with benefits. And by the way, at that time, I didn't even know what benefits meant, except my father-in-law, who was self-employed, basically said, I was working for a home builder, under the table all the way through college. And so he basically said, you need to get a job with benefits. I said, okay, what's benefits? He explained that my then wife, his daughter, was going off of his insurance like ASAP, and benefits were basically health insurance. So pre-LinkedIn, 1991, I did what we did, which was printed 20 resumes and literally went door to door, like in the surrounding town that we lived in, and just went to the front desk, asked if they were hiring, and if they said yes, I left my resume and I left. And lo and behold, like 2 days later, I got a phone call back, and this company, Fireman's Fund mortgage company, called me and asked if I could come in for an interview. And so I went in and, met with whoever this, whatever that screening process was, did the first, 30-minute conversation, and actually got a call back that afternoon. It asked if I could come back the next day to meet the hiring manager, had like a 45-minute conversation, and then got a call. Like by the time I got home, I already had a message asking if I could start the following Monday. And we never talked never talked about income or anything, but I asked on that call one question: does this job have benefits?
Does it have benefits?
They said yes. I said I'll be there Monday. So that's literally how I got in the industry. And my first job was, today we would call it a loan officer assistant.
Okay.
But I was basically screening leads, and then based on the response, on the screening, if it was a positive, I'd put it in the right pile. If it was a negative, I threw it in the trash bin. So I was like a modern day CRM / loan officer assistant back then. And mind you, the market rate, the par rate was somewhere like 10.5%, 11%.
Right. Yeah.
But dropping. So if you think of like, end of 91 into 92, rates went from double digit par to like 9, 9.5, 9, 8.5. And Fireman's Fund was a big Ginnie Mae servicer. And we were doing what today we would call retention recapture. We were just calling it refinances back then. But we got busy, and when I hired in, there was 6 of us, and inside of 6 months, there was 60 of us. So, they basically looked around the room, figured out who's been here the longest. I was one of the few that had been there more than 3 months. So I was promoted to like a team lead, supervisor, if you will, or sales manager. And that was like the last time I physically wrote a loan was in early 92. And I got into production sales management pretty quickly from there. And so most of my 33 years was spent running, managing, leading, mortgage sales teams.
And what I think this would be for a lot of folks would be interesting to know, what was the tech stack like in 1991?
Tech stack, what's that? We had
or was there one? Was it just pens?
Yeah, we had a green, we had the old green screen monitors, right? So it was what they call it. I remember we had these massive IBM machines, and not everybody had one on their desk. Loan officers, I didn't have one. Loan officers, we had a 10-key calculator, and then the good ones went out and bought the an HP. And so I think I have like 20 of those laying around my office. That was it. That was the tech stack. It was pretty simple back then. We hand wrote every loan application. This was the funny thing is, because we were basically servicing retention, we would every evening, our sales leader would have to, and I became that guy, we would submit a report request to the reporting department.
Uh-huh.
And then the next morning, first person in would go down to the second floor. There was like this little desk, and there'd be all these reports sitting there. You'd grab your report, and that was the call sheet for the day. And then you'd just tear off, they were all perforated. You tear off a sheet, and every LO got their sheet of 100 calls to make that day. That was it.
And one last question, and then we'll move on. But did loans get underwritten faster back then? Like, did we close quicker without tech?
Yeah, we were definitely, things were humming through, because these were all, streamlined refis.
Right.
Servicer to servicer.
Very little oversight.
We had an underwriter that just sat right on the sales floor. So like literally we'd get an application and just hand it over, and usually, same day in and out. They were, I don't remember any of them not getting approved, by the way. They were all they were all mostly FHA streamlined refis, just rate and terms. but it was pretty cool. That was a great run. It was, we were all young, 20 somethings. I was like 23, 24 when I got in the business. And so a lot of us grew up, literally grew up together, had to mature in business together. And, but we got to do some cool stuff. Like we built a homegrown loan origination system and underwriting engine called SourceLink. And then we got acquired in '99 by Citibank, and they scrapped it and, did their own thing. But it was pretty cool to be involved in a massive, homegrown proprietary tech project while still running a business.
Right. So the leap from, you've really come up through the loan officer realm. You have no background in technology for the most part, whatsoever. And then you were like, you know what? I've got a great idea. How about I leave everything behind and start my own technology company?
So I didn't start it. I don't know that.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. It's all right. I was, I've known the founders of FinLocker. We go back to like 99, 2000.
Okay.
They were, these guys originally founded Lenders One, the mortgage cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they sold Lenders One to Altisource, and they were on for like 2 or 3 years, and then they left. They started a handful of companies in St. Louis, which is where they're from. One of those companies was FinLocker, and because I've always been part of Lenders One in all the companies I was with, and so I knew what they were working on when they started FinLocker. And so I was at Flagstar at the time, and we brought them in and we looked at the day one product from FinLocker, which was an asset verification product before there was really any digital verification of assets.
Got it.
And so I didn't like the product, but I liked the tech and the concept of the product. And I did invest in the business early and kind of kept tabs on it. And then over a two plus year period into like 2018, I started having more detailed conversations with these guys around their roadmap. And, basically I said, I think the play, guys, is using this concept of this financial locker, thus FinLocker. And the original concept was consumer created this locker, this financial locker, connected a bank account, and then the platform created a secure share of data from the bank account to the lender, right? So this predated what is now, day one certainty, digital VOA. I said, I don't see that scaling, but I think there's a play for a more holistic consumer financial experience, leveraging this infrastructure you built. And so they started working on that. I got excited about where they were going with it in late 18, and then in early 19 started conversations that led to me joining the company in the summer of 2019. And so before anyone, says how smart I was, I'll make sure and we cut it off at the pass. We all know what happened, in February, March of 2020. The world changed. Rates went into the low threes, dipping into the twos, and I missed out on over a 30-year career. Would have been probably the largest production opportunity in my working life. So I deserve no credit for anything other than bad timing.
Well, we don't know yet, right? Maybe not.
Jury's
So
out.
Brian, was this a case of like, Brian, you keep having all these great ideas, why don't you do it?
Yeah, I mean, how this goes, right? And I know PK is learning this in your business. We all are learning it. We get feedback from trusted sources, and hopefully some of those trusted sources are people that are either using our product or we would want to use our product. And we weren't a client, but I was invested in the business and kind of a pseudo advisor to the business. And so I did have a lot of ideas and suggestions, and there was a point where it's like, well, I think you could be a lot more valuable if you actually quit giving us ideas and actually help us execute on these ideas. So that led to that led to me. Here's the deal. I've always been in kind of the, I'll call it today the comfy confines of corporate. And so this is as close to, an entrepreneurial situation as I was going to get in, because the company was very much a startup when I got here. And so I have a lot of the founder scars and wounds, but I'm not a true founder.
I might disagree with you on that, but it's more of an emotional state that you've gone through than anything else, right?
Oh,
Whether you were there from day one or not, I think makes a difference.
Well, can you do like the 20-second speed run on what FinLocker does, Brian? I think a lot of people know, but a lot of people might not.
Yeah, I mean the way that I usually describe it, if for running up a 20-story building in an elevator, is if you think about what consumers use for personal financial tools, whether it's Rocket Money, Credit Karma, it used to be Mint.com, maybe even your own online banking tools that come with your bank account, and even Zillow, right? Those are all features that today most consumers go to unique, disparate apps for. We've combined many of those features into one piece of technology. Our secret sauce, if you will, or our specialty is, instead of me as a loan officer, me as a lender, sending my customer to Credit Karma, I can send them to my own kind of private label branded version of this experience. And then what we do on top of those tools, and more importantly, if you think of each of those tools that I briefly described, or at least gave you the brand names for, underneath each of those tools is a pretty rich, deep set of consumer permission, direct source data, whether it's credit data, whether it's financial bank account data. We just, like tomorrow, our release is going to give consumers the ability to link directly to their employment, their payroll account. And so we use that direct source data. And then on top of the data, we build very prescriptive, custom dynamic home ownership journeys. And so the one that's probably most relevant, especially in this market, is for what we call an early journey first-time home buyer. Think of somebody that's 6, 12, 18 months from being ready to buy. I talk about the difference between point of sale, when someone actually is ready to apply, versus point of thought. So we're talking about like the early point of thought consumer.
Like if there was a kid who just got married who was getting a job purely for benefits, you probably want to sign up for this product.
That's the guy. That's the guy right there. And so now, as a loan officer, if I can invite young Brian, into this app 2 years before he's really ready to buy or think about buying, then I'm building this trust, this relationship through education preparation in my ecosystem. It's a closed ecosystem. And Mike is like,
Mike.
Mike's my guy. I love Mike.
Mike loves Mike.
By the way, guys, there's no way Mike's the only one watching. I know there's hundreds.
No. We've got a lot of people out there. So folks, drop into the comments. Suha's out there.
Mike is one of the brightest direct-to-consumer minds I know. So if there's anyone out there looking for expertise around consumer direct and like an efficient process around consumer direct, he's the guy. Anyway, FinLocker. So FinLocker is like this closed ecosystem that lenders can use to reach, assist, engage, nurture, and hopefully convert, early journey home buyers into.
So we're taking the top of funnel and typical mortgage and going even higher. Right.
Yeah,
so
if you want to think like timely news, right? We're on the heels of Rocket's announcement that they are acquiring Redfin and Mr. Cooper, right? And so what we're trying to do is position, everybody that's not Rocket to have a similar tech stack or tech tools to be able to engage consumers in a similar fashion than some of the best and compared to some of the best and brightest out there. And I think Rocket's clearly one of the best in terms of consumer facing technology and marketing.
So Brian, I apologize. I was only laughing because I told Mace earlier today that we would not talk about Rocket, UWM, interest rates, or the CFPB. No, I'm messing with it.
Well, you know what?
You're totally
Tom,
right.
before you joined, we talked. We were going to do some live wagering on who the next pope will be. So we're happy to take bets here today.
Yeah, if anyone wants to drop into the comments, which, by the way, if anybody has a question who's watching, if you want to drop in the comments, we'll try to get those in. Before we go to the next round of all this, Brian, what is the dumbest piece of tech advice you've ever gotten?
Oh my gosh, the dumbest. Yeah, it's probably it's probably advice I gave myself, just so you know.
That works too.
That's a great question. I don't know that there's ever been any dumb advice. I would say here's how I would answer it. I would question everything because I do in a past life as a lender, and now I sit on the other side of the desk as a provider partner. I hate the word vendor, a provider partner to lenders. I oftentimes took feedback from a vendor as gospel without necessarily, validating, if you will. And so I remember someone saying, these are the 3 products you should stitch together in an integration, and here's why. As I think back on that deal, and this was a CRM company coming into us, the 2 other partners that they suggested were strategic partners that they had reseller agreements with. And so, I just think everything needs to be questioned and validated. And I say that as a provider in this space. I would say the same thing to somebody that's considering FinLocker. You should be getting, feedback from other users, other clients, people that look like you as a business and have that similar business model.
Yeah, I know PK's got a question, but sorry, real quick. I want to hammer on that point because Brian, you guys do, kind of proof of concepts or a freemium period version of the product, right?
We do. We have. We're very flexible, even on our enterprise white label deals. We want to serve consumers, and we're not a direct to consumer company. And so the way we're going to serve consumers at scale is through lenders and through loan officers. So we will definitely do and get creative on pilots. We launched a version of our tech that's where I'm the enterprise. Mm-hmm. We call it Key Steps.
Yeah.
And so any loan officer, can get access to Key Steps and, sign up. It's month to month. They can sign up. If they don't like it, they can go away. There's no long-term commitment, for the LO. And it's a great way to kind of test out, because we're different. I'm not necessarily replacing, something else in their tech stack. And so in a lot of ways, we're asking loan officers to, no pun intended, rethink everything about how they engage and when they engage consumers.
I just have to say, I really, really appreciate that. I think in this day and age, it's so critical that people are able to get a partner who believe in their product enough, right? That listen, I'm not going to make you sign a 3-year contract before you even test out the product itself.
Right.
Anyways, PK.
Andrew, actually, you asked the question I was going to ask about the kind of product offerings, but I do have a follow-up question, which is, Brian, I think I've seen you share a couple examples of LOs that have taken that Key Steps product and run a playbook where they're going, hosting events and webinars, things like that, funneling people into the product and then converting those down the line. Can you share an example of maybe someone who's doing that right, or that playbook in real life, essentially?
Yeah. I love that question. There's a loan officer. His name's Cole, Cole, Brantley. And Cole has been doing Facebook webinars. So he's been working with this other guy, Luke Shankula, and Luke has helped him create these webinar funnels, lead funnels that lead to a webinar focused on first-time home buyers. And so this is a good segue into, to connect the dots on that freemium free trial. So I was watching Luke promote these lead funnel webinars, and then I connect the dots and I see Cole putting out content on Facebook, drawing people in to sign up for his webinar. Didn't take me long to connect the dots that Cole's working with Luke on this lead gen strategy. And I already know Luke, so I pinged Luke and said, "Hey, I'd love an intro to Cole. I want to offer something up and just do a test and learn together." So he connects us. Cole and I get on a call. I give him, a 30-minute overview of key steps and said, "I want to just give you the tool for this webinar. No strings attached. Let's see what happens." And so Cole had, 80 people, 200 plus filled out the lead form. 80 showed up for the live home buying webinar. And a credit to Cole, like in less than 3 days, he learned the ins and outs of this Key Steps app and seamlessly incorporated it into his teaching in his webinar. And during the webinar, he had over half of the attendees download the app and create an account. And so what was cool was not just that happened. That was pretty cool to see, but for the next 2 to 6 weeks, watching the data, watching what those users were doing, 2, 3, 5 weeks after the event, still using the app, still logging back in. And so Cole had this tech now that was living on that attendee's phone 24/7, 365, that was keeping him connected more than even his, CRM strategy was, right? So it was cool to watch that come to life and watch these users actually engage with the tools coming off of the teaching that Cole did in that webinar.
Love that.
I love that sales strategy. That's what I call software drug dealing.
Yeah.
He gave it to him free, and he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
If the product's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to do what it's got to be good. But there's also, and I talk about this a lot, and this goes for just about any product that's out there, especially products that are loan officer facing. The tech is only as good as the user. And if the user is not going to adopt the tech, then, because we have people that'll sign up and then 2 months later, they'll say, "This didn't work for us." And we're like, "Okay, no harm, no foul." And then you go look at the logs.
What is the data? Do they log
You look
in?
at the logs, and like they never logged in as a loan officer into the admin portal and did anything. And so of course it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 100%. There's no question about it. All right. Going from there, I actually, one other question, I think specifically about FinLocker. And I know I get it, like generative AI is all the buzz, right? And I obviously, like, I own an AI company, so I'm a little bit biased on that, but I do think it's not needed everywhere. But that being said, I'm still kind of curious to know, is that something you guys have looked at? Are you utilizing it some fashion? Like, what does that sort of look like in your guys' world?
Yeah, we're definitely leveraging AI in a bunch of different places. We use a bunch of different, AI applications in our B2B biz dev, marketing, and sales efforts. So that's easy. That's kind of, doesn't really touch our product.
Right. Yeah.
But it's been amazing, in a short period of time, how much we've been able to create around content. And then we use it in our customer success team to accelerate, creating user guides and training materials. So think of the B2B side and the account management side. It's been massively impactful. We're using it, I'd say 3/4 of our dev team is using, and this is where I go off the rails. I have no idea what they're using, but they're using some products to help accelerate, the work they do in the product development space. To the extent that, there's some code that's being written, with AI tools today, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then we stood up a chat bot, for lack of a better description, that sits in our backend, our admin portal, and it's a closed environment. So we have taught that chat bot, so it knows everything about FinLocker. So a loan officer can go in there and interrogate the chat bot and ask questions. How do I do this? Where do I access this? Blah 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 blah. We also took all the content, the marketing content we've been creating, and put that in the chat bot. And so now loan officers can go in and ask the bot to write a social media post to promote their FinLocker app, or a set of email journeys, blah 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 blah. The thing that we're working on next, and it's happening, we're in like a beta stage. So the two areas I just described are outside of the consumer app, right? And so because we sit on so much consumer permission direct source data, we've been very cautious to expose any of that, and so one of the things we're doing is we do this perpetual assessment of somebody's mortgage readiness. And that assessment is done on a scenario that the consumer creates when they're in the app. Like, I want to buy a house for $500,000, be ready in 10 months. And I'm going to have a $50,000 down payment, just making up those numbers.
Yeah.
That's like the key, the scenario that we run assessments on. We're using, again, I'm not sure exactly what we're doing, but we're using AI to run alternate scenarios off of the same data set and say, okay, if you did a $20,000 down payment versus a $50,000 down payment, your loan amount goes from $500 to $530. Here's the output. Here's what that looks like. And so that's like our first kind of step into how do we start using the AI tools inside the experience. And there'll be, I would say by the end of this year, we'll have more of an interaction happening where the consumer will actually be able to, interrogate their own data using some AI tool inside the app.
Yeah, which is exactly the way we actually talk to companies about the way their AI journey should look, is always like what tools can you utilize outside of your technology, right? Like, what can you use just internally? And this LinkedIn Live is a perfect example. Literally everything was created with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like the logos that you see, the coloration, like all of it, the format for the show, obviously the intro.
All of us are actually AI avatars too.
Yeah, we're actually, this whole thing is fake, folks. So actually, PK and Mace, I'm going to turn it on you guys a little bit here. And I'd love to hear how are you guys using AI, not in your products, but in your business itself?
I can go first. I've used it to build, side projects, to test ideas out really quickly. I've shared a lot of those tools with Mace and you as well. And so I would say I'm pretty active on, or heavy user on GPT, just because I've been brainstorming different ideas, working through things, finding blind spots that I'm not seeing. That's been huge. For marketing stuff, I've used it here and there, nothing too crazy. I feel like for copy and things like that, GPT is perfect for that. Played around with Windsurf, Cursor, Bolt. Those are some tools I've played around with, and I always tell people in the mortgage industry to play around with, because it's quite surprising how many people haven't played around with. And I know Mace, when I first showed it to him, wasn't happy about it, or wasn't very excited about it. And then he went in and dug with it, and he loved it, and he's been a huge fan since. But yeah, I would say GPT, and I feel like I'm blanking, but I think I've used Scribe before for a lot of product documentation and things like that. Those are the ones come to my mind. Like I use GPT like pretty much every day.
Yeah. Mace, we all know that Mace is like the #1 evangelist for vibe coding. Point. And Mace, will you explain to everybody what vibe coding is?
Yeah, it's basically basically programming with AI, right? But so last year we sold some IP, and so we kind of, it was kind of one of those Greyhound caught the rabbit, and so I was very uncomfortable. I wanted to have something to like something to focus on, and I think we were kind of blessed in that. I think with a lot of developers, you tell them like, "Hey, check out this AI tool," and they're like, "That's cool. I'm freaking busy." And they're like, that's how most people operate, right? You're like, "Hey, go try these tools," and it's like, I'm going to next week. I'm just really busy right now." And so we were forced to kind of go play, right? And I say play, but we got a lot of reps in, and so with those reps, we even took on some side projects for some. There's a top 10 mortgage company we did something for end of last year. I think I told either you or PK about this. The deadline was Q3 of 25, and we did it before the end of last year, getting the project in November. And so we even told them what we were going to do, and they're like, "Yeah, we just don't know anybody who has the AI expertise." And I'm like, "Well, you could go learn this." And so again, they just haven't done it yet. So with those tools, I mean, we've done hardware, we use even our Git commits where you're putting in notes, having AI so we can go back and just, hey, tell us what happened in the last 3 releases. It can do all that. But it is amazing what you can do with Claude, Sonnet, Klein, Copilots, Windsurf, Bolt, all those things. There's a lot of them. And then you have now Devin, which is another just agent.
Yeah, I mean, we use it. Our development team uses it. According to them, we get about a 30% lift, is what they say from a coding perspective. And I'll take that all day, twice on Sundays. Okay, so I want to jump Stephen Galley's comment. Stephen, I hope I said your name right. I thought this was a great question, right? It's like, a lot of us have seen analog and digital. When I came into the industry, I was on the capital markets side, and I still remember we had laptops that had a DOS-based platform. Any Clayton folks out there who remember the original Class platform from the late 1990s, early 2000s, and we had paper files. There were no imaged files, like whatsoever. So anyways, I think this is a great question. And Brian, if you don't mind hitting it first, like, we've seen analog, we've seen digital. Like, what still feels slow in the process?
I always, these conversations always end up with like the checker, right? The whole, if you think about the loan manufacturing process, doesn't just end at closing and funding, right? For a mortgage banker, it potentially never ends, but it ends ultimately when they, dissolve, sell, extinguish that asset, right?
Yep.
Wherever it goes downstream. And it's amazing to me with all the tools, all the digital tools and the technology, that when a loan gets sold from ABC Mortgage to a buyer, an aggregator, and then potentially to a GSE, if that's the only stop, that's a pretty streamlined process. There could be multiple stops in the way, how each stop has its own due diligence in a lot of rechecking, stuff that's already happened. And so I think that's an area that we're still ripe for innovation. And frankly, it has to start from the investor side and come back to the point of sale. In other words, the investor community has to say, we'll accept the data, that gets originated here, as long as it's coming through these trusted sources. And, Fannie and Freddie kind of have started that with their version, their D1C products, but there's still a lot of redundant steps in the process when a loan goes from player A to player B to player C. And I think, all of that contributes to the cost to produce ultimately.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And again, being a guy who grew up in the capital markets space and particularly in the TPR and, securitization bond space, it's absolutely amazing to me how inefficient it is from the moment particularly non-QM. To your point, if you're delivering straight agency, that's a little bit better. It's a better mechanism. It actually is an argument as to agency loans would go to the secondary market if it wasn't so difficult to deliver it to the secondary market, which still, and I'm going to get in trouble, I am certain, for saying this, but like we still don't have a like good OCR offering, right? Like one of the biggest problems is the data. You just said it, Brian, is the data itself. And everybody wants this like third level of like data assurity. And the problem is still to this day, it is largely stare and compare of a human typing it in because we just haven't gotten really solid data extraction.
I think that's one of the areas that's going to get better and easier and cheaper, faster, all that with a lot of these AI tools.
Yeah, I hope so. If anybody solves that problem, please shoot me a DM or call me.
Well, I do think it's funny whenever if you ask anybody in the OCR or AI space, like, hey, will you rep and warrant this? They're like, well,
yeah.
And then there starts to be this explanation, like this long drawn out no, but it's like if, and yeah, it's quite a statement.
Also on this this question from Steven about curious what still feels slow despite all the tech. My kind of take is that there's a lot of I guess like technology being built for LOs, for the underwriting space, LOS, point of sale. Those are kind of like the, I would say, front facing ish pieces of technology. I think there's a lot of like underloved parts of the business, like risk, compliance, and things like that. We spend a lot of time with folks in that space, so we kind of see what tools they're working with, and oftentimes it's very antiquated technology, if any. And so I think there's a lot of love to, a lot of products that can be built in that space as well, and we're excited about that personally.
All right, so I got to jump in here. All right, how old are you, PK?
26.
Listen, Mace, you're not exactly that old either. You're not Brian. You're not Brian and me.
Yeah. But I love that PK took the opportunity to go ahead and throw in some compliance and risk there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got to put this one up real quick because once again, Mike is just coming strong with the comments today. OCR is like Tesla's self-driving.
Yeah.
It's always coming next year.
Just for the record, PK is younger than my youngest child, so just going on record.
Is that the baseball star?
No, he's 31.
He is? Okay.
He's an old dude.
That was, by the way, that was to go completely off topic. That was some of my absolute favorite LinkedIn posts when you went to Japan.
Yeah.
Like,
It
was so amazing to see that. So, all right, let's move on. Some quicker questions here. Is there a tech? Wait, what was the first piece of tech that you ever used in the mortgage world?
Probably a 10 key.
Okay, yeah, all right, that's fair.
And then I advanced like 3 weeks later and went and bought a HP.
Okay,
just because everybody else had one, I had to be, I needed that little, the little leather pouch. It had its own little container.
I want to know. Yeah, I'm curious to know how many people that are watching this, and you can drop in the comments, remember computers that were just black on green or green on black. And that was those are the colors you got.
That's it.
I was going to ask what piece of SaaS, but like SaaS didn't exist back then. It was everything was probably on-prem. So what was like the first on-prem software?
Fannie Mae's desktop underwriter, because it had to be installed. So that was I remember that when we had a big implementation and it had to be installed in our platform for us to be able to, and we, the originators, couldn't touch it. It was only an underwriting tool back then.
And was installation floppy disk or CD?
Ours was probably neither. But I remember, was it whatever the first version of Calyx was, and it could have been Calyx back then. I don't know. I remember that they deployed their tech through a CD. Like you'd have to load the CD to get their software.
Gotcha.
Tech trend you're bullish on.
I mean, it's easy to say AI.
Yeah.
I think just early, literally earlier today, I'll give a little shout out to Total Expert. I got a impromptu demo of some AI talk tech that they're implementing in pilot with some clients today. It's pretty amazing. I don't know if you guys have tested like a virtual salesperson where you've actually gotten into a conversation. I've done a few just for testing purposes. It's remarkable. It's scary and remarkable at the same time. I don't think we're anywhere near
right
mortgages getting sold that way, but I think in our businesses, especially in the B2B space, it's a really interesting way for for working with up funnel prospects, B2B prospects. And there's a couple pieces of tech that I've been checking out where all I've done is had a conversation, literally a verbal conversation with this bot. And it's, like I said, it's remarkable how even how it can read the tone of the voice. It's pretty crazy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see where that fits in and where it doesn't. And, the example is like, I always love to tell people this: computers have been better at chess than humans for a very, very long time. But nobody watches computers play chess.
Right.
We still want to see the two people going at it on the actual chess table. Right. So like, I can see this AI piece taking like SDR roles, maybe, but not really the AE roles. But then you get into this whole, like, how do you develop AEs if they can't do the SDR job? And
oh yeah,
it'd be interesting to say.
What is y'all's takes on the bots? So I feel like we have some people like myself. I'm like, give me a bot first, and then I want to try to get the solution. And then I just want the option to quickly get a human. But most of the time I'm just like, oh, they have an AI. Sweet. I'm going to talk to that first. Usually I get my answer. I actually like a bot first. What about you guys?
Same.
Go ahead, PK.
I was going to say, I like a human. Sometimes it's better. I don't know. I haven't had any great experiences that I remember for the bot stuff, but I think nowadays you're starting to see more of those. Like, I think Intercom has it, like the Fin AI or something, where you can ask questions and it's been trained on all the help docs and things like that. Those are pretty good. But I've seen the demos for some of these voice agents. I haven't used it as a customer of any company, so I can't speak for that yet. But typically, I like just speaking directly to a human and going from there.
So this is going to be ironic, right? Like, we build AI agents. That's what we do. And I desperately have been trying to like rebrand chatbots into knowledge agents. We have a real problem in this space is there's still tons of websites out there that have very antiquated or very antiquated like chatbots, and they do a terrible job. Right. But then you've got companies out there who, again, I keep calling them knowledge agents because it's very, very different, right? Like traditional, like decision tree chatbots, I won't even use them. Like, I don't even like, so I actually, ironically, I am like, nah, can I just get the human? I'm the guy on the American Airlines going representative.
I think there's a distinction to the old decision tree one. And like you just said, Andrew, I think in your shoes, wouldn't you say, I think the knowledge bases also have to be up to date, right? Like if you've got garbage in, you're getting garbage out.
We've had this conversation too. It also has to be an enterprise grade AI platform, right? Like I've seen people who are like, I'm just going to push all this information against, ChatGPT. And it's like, not to get too nerdy, but like, obviously like extraction, chunking, search, like before we ever get to the LLM, which is one of the problems I think with generative AI is everybody just thinks like, oh, I've got a problem. Generative AI will solve it because Mark Zuckerberg said he's replacing all engineers with it. Like it's just not, there's so many pieces up front that you have to have really solid and understand until you can actually introduce the LLM that serves any purpose. So
Do you guys say please and thank you in
I don't anymore. I did until I saw I did it. I'll admit it.
Did you see the data on the amount of people that said please and thank you for the sole purpose of the fact that they thought there might be a robot uprising, and so that was why they did it? And so it was like over 13%. It was like,
I had heard it helps on the prompting side at one point in time, right? Like, because there's so much like weirdness. Like there's an article out there where apparently if you give like GPT like a prize or something that it'll get, like a reward, that like it performs better.
Oh wow.
Like in its prompting. So
Scooby snacks.
All right, we're getting here kind of towards the end. Brian, if I gave you $5 million today, what problem would you go solve with it?
Oh wow.
In tech.
In tech, of course,
not
right?
like world hunger or anything.
Yeah. 5 million is not going to go very far.
No, it's not. Probably not even in tech.
Maybe I'll go help Harvard. I heard they're hurting for funding. Great question. I think, I would probably double down on my kind of passion for helping more people get financially fit for home ownership much earlier in their life. Not that 18-year-olds are necessarily ready to buy a home, but 18-year-olds should be learning about the actions they take as an 18, 19, 20-year-old and how those actions will impact down the road their ability to become a homeowner. So I think I would probably spend a lot of more time in that space. And I love what Kristen Messerly and Todd Bookspan and Dave Savage are doing with their First Home IQ nonprofit, where they're essentially arming loan officers, local loan officers, community-based loan officers as ambassadors, and arming them with this, what I call world-class financial literacy content. And they're then going into the community, into high schools even, and starting to teach, a layer of financial literacy that ultimately leads into home ownership. But again, it could be 2 or 6 years off for people. But I think that's where I would probably double down.
I love it. Okay. This is more for the entire group. And you got a couple of options here. Book or podcast that you're loving in the tech space, a tech idea that you're noodling, or a new product that you've been testing. PK.
I just picked up a book last night. It's not a tech book, but it's about a time management, and I was going to recommend it to you guys actually at some point later today. It was just like, I think it's called 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals or something like that. It's a different perspective on this whole concept of productivity and how to manage time. It's a phenomenal book. I'm in 2 or 3 chapters in, and I was going to text both of you guys. I'm like, you guys need to read this. Like, it's phenomenal. I think it's like eye-opening about kind of like the state of how we think about how we spend our times. I know we're all kind of entrepreneurs and trying to make the most of our time and things like that. It just gives a different perspective that you don't really hear in, I guess like popular media, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever you're using. So I would say that. And then what was the second question?
Oh, you don't have to answer them all, but new product you're testing?
New product I'm testing. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know. I feel like there's like 2 or 3 things every week that we're just going to be going through.
All right, there you go.
I'll give it to Mace.
I mean, there's this new show called No One Asked Us.
There you go.
I haven't heard of it.
I really like the way Brian, your post about what is this, like Seinfeld, like, because kudos to Brian, because I think Brian was like, hey, what do you think about doing this, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, no question, he didn't ask one thing, just I'm in. So thank you, Brian, for that. And something we're working on is we're playing with some AI underwrite stuff. I think you guys are getting sick of hearing me talk about what we're doing with Google and AWS and our grants and all that. But we're definitely we're playing with it slow because I think Mike Cush, he said something funny earlier. He's like, OCR has been around the corner for 20 years. Yeah. And I think we're ripe for lenders to start getting angry when they start their first or second vendor that says they use AI. And then they just back off. And I think we talked about this a little, Andrew, where I know I worked with PRMI, and then someone says OCR and they're like, get out.
Yeah.
We've already spent $1 million on this. Like, I don't even want to try it anymore. I'm done. And so we're definitely treading lightly, and hopefully the people that are getting in these early, Brian, do us right by using AI correctly. I love that you're doing it slow. Because I'm already anxious for mortgage companies to just say, and this uses AI, and then just shut it down. So got to do it right.
I feel like a lot of mortgage has that, by the way.
I'll share this one. This is a book that our CEO, Henry Kaysen, has shared around the company. And it's a great reminder, especially for what we're doing. And, our tech, our product ultimately has a consumer that's going to engage it. And sometimes we all kind of fall into this trap where we go right into solution mode. And so we've been really intentional about staying in the problem mode a little bit longer than we normally would, and I think it's helping us really think through all the edge cases of the gaps that a lot of first time home buyers have. So that it's a great mindset to have, and the guy that wrote it's the co-founder of Waze. So you just think about the Waze solution. And then think of how many different problems Waze was out there trying to solve, right? And they're still trying to solve them.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm with you both on the. I mean, it's one of the things we do is we do a free POC for all of our clients up front, just because I think to your point, Mace, it's like everybody is a little bit gun shy, and we've got a lot of new products that are flooding into the market, so I think that's important. I'm going to go with podcast, so and I'm going to plug a couple friends, Jeremy Utley, and who was a former D school professor at Stanford, and wrote actually an amazing book that's right below Brian's book, Idea Flow. And Henrik Wonderland, who's the co-founder of BarkBox, they have a podcast called Beyond the Prompt, and it is hands down, I think, one of the best AI podcasts that's out there. They get some insane guests. They had like the CIO from Instacart, a bunch of other big companies and whatnot. Peter Hollins, who's a huge YouTube sensation. And they really break down AI and how it's being utilized in different companies within the products, as well as within the group. So, Brian, we're going to end. So our next guest for everybody, she's actually watching us right now. So Suha Zell, thank you so much. And Suha, you're going to actually get to cheat a little bit here. So, Brian, one question that you want Suha to answer next week, because she will be our guest.
And thank you for giving me that prompt early in the our conversation. and then of course I forgot all about it until now. So I know Suha, and I know what she does. And so Suha, what I would want to know next week is how do you prep a prospect when you're going on site? What's the most efficient way to prep them so that when you go on site, you're going to get, you and they are going to get the most value, most bang for the buck on that initial consultation. I think it's something that, as a business development person and salesperson, I'm not very good at that. And so I think if I can learn how to improve that prep process, it's going to make it that initial consult more valuable. So that's what I would want to know from Suha.
Talk about efficient use of time, Brian. During a podcast, getting help. I love it.
I'm always asking for help.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Brian, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. Everybody out there, if you are not following Brian, please go out there, and give him a follow. Give FinLocker a follow as well. It's actually really important that our company pages get follows as well.
Oh yeah.
Just so everybody knows that. So, all right, folks, thank you so much. And we'll hopefully see everybody back here again next week.